far, the effects of the US federal government shutdown that started on October 1st have had minimal impact on the automotive aftermarket. But if it continues, there could be disruptions in the parts, repair, and accessory segments. So here's a breakdown of potential impacts, risks, and mitigations. So, regulatory and certification delays may happen. Things like permitting, certifications, and approvals for new products, emissions compliance, safety certifications may be delayed if federal agencies are furloughed. Some agencies, like the EPA or DOT, for example, if their operations are suspended, product launches could be delayed. Now, on the customs, imports, and trade processing realm, there may be slower processing at customs, import inspections, and trade related services, which could delay inbound parts. Now, reduced staffing at ports and customs during a shutdown is a known risk for manufacturers and importers. Now, let's talk about procurement and government contracts. If aftermarket suppliers or accessory makers have contracts with federal agencies for fleets or infrastructure, government vehicle maintenance, payments and orders may be postponed. The aftermarket largely serves the retail and private sector, so government contracts are a smaller share. Now, when it comes to consumer demand and spending, lower consumer confidence and furloughed federal workers with reduced income or delayed payments may suppress discretionary spending, which includes vehicle upgrades and accessory purchases. The longer a shutdown does drag on, the greater the ripple effect in consumer behavior. And of course, we're all worried about the supply chain strain. Combined with pre existing pressures such as tariffs, a supply chain mutation, any additional delays or uncertainty magnifies stress on part supply, inventory, and logistics. Obviously, the aftermarket already faces pressures from import tariff and supply chain shifts. And we're also worried about and monitoring a regulation or policy freeze. So, any new policies, grants, incentives, or infrastructure programs that could benefit the aftermarket, such as EV incentives, federal grants for repair shops, may be put on hold. Policy momentum often stalls during funding lapses, and additionally, agencies that oversee such programs may not be fully operational. We also have to consider data and market intelligence gaps. So, the release of federal economic data, such as jobs, industrial production, trade data, may be delayed or suspended, making forecasting just a bit harder for aftermarket companies. This can hamper your planning and risk management by industry players. Now, what are the more likely outcomes and scenarios? Obviously, things are moderate right now, with at the time of this podcast being produced, the shutdown has hit about a week. But if we put it all together, here's how the aftermarket might fare under different shutdown scenarios. So now that we've passed the 1 week mark, if we go into a medium government shutdown, meaning maybe 2 weeks to 4 weeks, we may see delays in imports, certification backlogs, and reduced consumer spending, and those begin to bite. So, launches of new parts or product lines may be postponed. Some cash strapped smaller shops may pull back on investment or inventory orders. Supply chain tightness might worsen, especially for highly specialized parts. So, look out for that. Now, if Washington, D.C. goes into a prolonged government shutdown, we're talking over 30 days. It's important to note that the longest shutdown was only 35 days back in 2018, but the risks do magnify at this point. So at this point, the risks are pretty low to moderate, but if we reach 30 days plus, this is where we want to look really closely at it. So new product approvals could pile up, parts bottlenecks multiply, and consumer pullback may become more pronounced. Some aftermarket businesses, particularly small and mid sized ones, could face financial stress, especially if combined with other macro pressures such as high interest rates and inflation. Some projects reliant on federal programs or contracts may also be shelved. Now, it's important to keep in mind that the automotive aftermarket in 2025 is already contending with significant headwinds, right? Tariffs and import costs, for example. The imposition of 25% tariffs on auto parts in 2025 is altering cost structures and supply chains. with regulatory change and compliance costs, such as the pullback on emissions rules and EPR, that's extended producer responsibility laws going into effect across the states, are creating new compliance rules and costs to consider, those increased costs. Now, there's also a shift in vehicle fleet and electrification, right? As more vehicles are adopting advanced systems such as EV, ADAS, lighter weight materials, the aftermarket must evolve technically, increasing capital costs and complexity. Thus, even a moderate shutdown may act as a stress magnifier, exacerbating vulnerabilities already in the system. So, what do we do about it? Here are just a few recommendations and mitigation strategies for auto care industry companies to help reduce the vulnerability to the effects of a government shutdown should it continue or extend any further. So, the number one thing is to buffer your inventory and find alternative sources. So, maintaining extra safety stocks of critical components, diversifying suppliers if you can, domestically or nearshoring to reduce reliance on imports that may get held up. Many of you are already doing this thanks to tariffs. Cash flow preparedness. So, bringing cash reserves or access to lines of credit to ride out periods of delayed consumer demands or payment disruption is also something that we're seeing. And being more flexible with your product launches. So, where possible, staggering your product launches until after agency operations resume to avoid getting bogged by regulatory backlog. Customer communication is going to be key as always. So, being proactive with your marketing, flexible payments and financing, or promotion even during downturns to help stimulate demand is going to be key. Federal workers or affected customers may need incentives. And monitor these government developments closely. I know it's a lot to follow. AutoCare is doing everything that we can to keep you informed about which federal agencies remain operational, what the expected functions are, and then plan around those windows as you learn that information. And lastly, always engage your industry associations. Auto Care Association is here to help advocate for relief measures or regulatory support during shutdowns. So we'll keep you posted as this continues. Hopefully it doesn't here in Washington, D.C. I'm Stacey Miller with another Traction Control.